Hello, and welcome to Day 2 of the eShopperReviews 2023 Game Awards. Today we'll be talking about technical awards on the Nintendo Switch platform. These awards are where we talk about the games with the best graphics, best sound, best story, that sort of thing. And we will start with the best music.
Every year when we do these awards, I have such a hard time narrowing down best music and best song because there are so many good options. And this year was no exception. In fact, I feel like this might have been the worst. There were so many good options. Know that even if a game had great music and you're not hearing it named here, just consider it might have been like one of the finalists that just barely didn't make it because there were so many like that. So, for best music, we'll start with the runners-up here. The first runner-up for best music is Jack Jean.
Cellos. It's so pretty.
Next up, we have Octopath Traveler 2.
There's like a mix of Western and Eastern instruments that works really well.
Yeah. The next runner-up is Backpack Hero.
So I can definitely tell this is from a keyboard.
Oh, yeah, this is synthesized. I'm not going for... It doesn't have to be, like, quality of the instruments, but quality of the composition as well.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I thought you were going for instruments as well. No, the composition's good. I really would like to hear it as, like, from a band or orchestra, though.
So the next runner-up is Hogwarts Legacy.
So yeah, John Williams really loves his brass, loves his French horns. He got that ethereal feeling with like the bells.
But this isn't John Williams.
No, it's not.
These are a trio of composers that are attempting to kind of mimic his style, and I feel like they do a magnificent job.
I think they do a magnificent job, but I also feel like after a while you can hear their signature sounds because John Williams did have woodwinds, but the way that these composers use woodwinds is very different from how John Williams does it.
I feel like it's kind of just the right sort of tone you want to hit for a game that's set in that universe, but in a completely different time period.
Oh, yeah.
And the final runner-up is a Highland song.
That flute instrument, or what sounds like a flute instrument, I really wonder what that was.
With this one, I felt like for a game that is very clearly trying to get you to feel like you're really exploring the Scottish moorlands, that this really kind of brings you into that kind of culture and did a great job of it. However, there was one other game that I felt like had a soundtrack that impressed me even better in 2023. And that game was Blasphemous 2.
I actually preferred the reverse order. I know, crazy, right? I prefer the reverse order.
I feel like all of them have really great soundtracks, but what really impressed me about Blasphemous 2's soundtrack was how the entire soundtrack really kind of puts you into the feel of this strange other world where everything was both at the same time beautiful but also grotesque and ugly, and that there is real heart in this, but it's also tortured. And this is a game with some really dark imagery, some really kind of creepy pseudo-Christian imagery, but despite that, there are people living in here, people suffering in this place, and I feel like this is a game that does a great job of kind of capturing that while still bringing out the fact that you are playing, for lack of a better way of putting it, a hero trying to struggle through this place and kind of save the humanity here, so to speak. Again, it's kind of difficult to put into words because of the strange nature of the world of the Blasphemous universe, but I feel like even more than the first game, this one, the soundtrack just really made it shine through and just was a perfect fit for the game.
Okay, so next up is Best Song.
Okay, the runners-up for this category are Spirit Call from Wild Frost, The next one is When We Laugh About Forgetting to Buy Something from Atelier Ryza 3.
It's very comfy. It gives off that comfy, cozy feeling.
You know, I kind of agree. That is a song that, by default, is kind of the shopkeeper theme from the game. The next runner-up is Encounter Elite from Sea of Stars.
A battle music, okay.
Yeah, I feel like that is definitely some epic boss music. Okay, next up is the standard battle music from Sea of Stars, Battle On. This is the daytime version.
It's not my type of music. You prefer more of the techno electronica sounding than I do.
I like everything. I mean, there's a little bit of everything in here, I feel like. And the final runner-up is Our Stars from This Way Madness Lies. Get the feeling watching your expressions that you tend to like more like orchestrated music, more real instruments.
That's what I grew up with.
Well, then hopefully you will approve more of my choice for the winner here.
Okay.
The boss fight for Colgera from The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The reason I selected this song as what I consider to be the best song of any game on Nintendo Switch in 2023. It's I think, a really good song, but more specifically what it does for that point in the game. Because I think you would probably agree with me if I were to say Colgera, out of all of the boss fights in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, probably the easiest.
Was that from the Wind Temple?
Yes, that's from the Wind Temple. Easiest boss fight. Yet I felt like this music makes it feel like this truly epic battle. It has these mournful notes in it that kind of highlights how it has created a lot of sadness within the Rito Kingdom. And as the song builds up, it eventually gets to this heroic melody that calls back to The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. It's doing so much here that makes it feel like this truly epic and heroic battle that, realistically speaking, the battle itself maybe doesn't quite have... Like I said, it's an easy battle, but it is immensely satisfying, and that is thanks largely to the wonderful music that this particular moment in the game has.
All right, next up for the awards is Best Sound Design.
For Best Sound Design, this is always a really difficult award for me, not because, there are so many good choices, but because if sound design is done well, it's often something that you don't even really notice while you're playing. So it's really hard to stop and take stock of it. And at the end of the year, when I'm looking back and it's like, okay, which games sounded good, but not the music, the sound, not the voice acting, the sound. However, I do feel like I noticed some particularly good sound design in a lot of the games from 2023. My runners-up for these are A Space for the Unbound, Super Crazy Rhythm Castle, Squad 51 versus the Flying Saucers, Cocoon, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The winner for Best Sound Design in 2023 is Dredge.
Interesting.
So, with this game, for those who aren't aware, it is technically a fishing game, but it's also a horror game. Mm-hmm. And the idea is, during the day, you're, peacefully fishing. It's actually very calming. But at night, these eldritch horrors come out from underneath the depths. And I feel like the sounds in this game do a great job of setting kind of an ominous tone, even when things are peaceful. The gloopy sound of the water, the chugging sound of your boat. And then, of course, when night comes out, it's, the horrifying sounds of the monsters themselves. Everything about the atmosphere in this game really pushes the idea that even when things are peaceful, this is a place where things are wrong. There's something wrong about this place. And I feel like it's the sound design more than anything that really pushes that in Dredge.
Up next is Best Voice Acting.
Every year when I do this award, I waver back and forth on whether to make it Best Voice Acting within a game or Best Singular Voice Acting Performance. And this year, I kind of cut the difference because I have one that is just generally the voice acting in this game is great. And then I think all the rest are a very specific performance that I thought was wonderful.
Okay.
So, the runners-up in this category are Various in Blasphemous 2. I thought that overall throughout this game it had great voice acting. Unknown as the narrator in Howl. I could not figure out who it was who performed the voice acting for this role, and I tried. If you happen to know, please put it in the comments. I would very much appreciate knowing this. Moving on, the next runner-up is Nicholas Guy Smith as Eleazar Fig in Hogwarts Legacy. Then Paul Warren as Uncle Hamish in Highland Song. And Patricia Somerset as Princess Zelda in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And the winner for Best Voice Acting in a game on Nintendo Switch in 2023 is MJ Deans as Moira McKinnon in Highland Song. Once again, I feel like a Highland Song is really about putting you into the world and culture of the Scottish Moors. And Moira is actually a fairly young character. She isn't really as much of a part of that world as a lot of the older characters in the game, but she still respects it and she still has a lot of enthusiasm for it. And I feel like all of those elements are pulled perfectly into this character by MJ Deans' performance here. I feel like you really get the idea of this character being a free spirit who still has a lot of love and care for the world and the legends that she grew up in. And I really appreciated that. It definitely made an impact on me.
Best graphical style.
So I separate out best graphics and best graphical style because there are a lot of games that visually look stunning, even though under the hood, it's not necessarily anything impressive that they're doing. It's not like they're wowing you by really pushing the boundaries. And I feel like those games deserve recognition too. So that's what this category is, for games that have a really great visual style that really makes the game look impressive, even if it's not something that's pushing boundaries, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The runners-up for that award are Dredge, Star Ocean: The Second Story R, Blasphemous 2, Sea of Stars, and Cocoon. And the winner for Best Graphical Style on Nintendo Switch in 2023 is Squad 51 versus the Flying Saucers.
Interesting.
This is a game that is very specific with the kind of visual style that they are going for. They are trying to create something that looks exactly like an old black and white B-movie, science fiction movie from back when they didn't have good special effects and, all the flying saucers are being held up on wires and, there's a lot of film grain and a lot of very poor acting, and every element of the style here is just beautifully captured in this game. It really sends you back to a very specific time and medium. And more than that, it incorporates elements of that into the gameplay itself. For example, one of the things that was common in films at that time was to have what they called cigarette burns on the film that would tell the projector when to change the roll of film. In this game, they use cigarette burns to kind of indicate to the player where enemies will be coming from on the screen, so the enemies can be coming from all over, left, right, up, down, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, it's using one of those parts of kind of the visual style to improve the gameplay, not just to make it look pretty. Overall, I just had a grin from ear to ear as I was playing this game because the visuals just captured perfectly what this is going for. I think other than Cuphead, I strained to think of another game that has so perfectly captured the kind of visual style of another era of a visual medium. Absolutely loved it.
Best graphics.
As I mentioned before, these are games that I really feel like tried as best they could to push the boundaries for what the Nintendo Switch was capable of. Granted, I think that we have well gotten to the point where most developers have really found where those edges are. The Nintendo Switch is old hardware after all. It came out in 2017, and even then, it looked kind of dated compared to other contemporaries because it was a handheld platform.
Mm-hmm.
But I still feel like some developers are really doing a good job of trying to find ways to make it look visually impressive despite those limitations. So, the games that I felt had the best graphics on Nintendo Switch in 2023, these are the runners-up. Dredge, Squad 51 versus the Flying Saucers, Cocoon, Metroid Prime Remastered, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, and best graphics on Nintendo Switch in 2023, the winner is Pikmin 4.
Oh.
I feel like Pikmin has always been kind of a showpiece game for the platforms it's released on. Unlike many other Nintendo games, this is one where it aims to kind of replicate the look of a real-life location, while all the while having these kind of silly cartoony characters going around and doing stuff within it. But with this game, I feel like they've upped the ante, making a believable, beautiful, realistic-looking world, while at the same time having a gazillion little Pikmin creatures moving around within it, carrying stuff and doing things. So overall, as far as graphical showpiece games on Nintendo Switch this year, I feel like Pikmin 4 is the best.
Best story, which I think was very tough for you to nail down.
Yes, there were some really good ones this year. I feel pretty happy with the one that I ended up selecting, though. It is, well, I'll get to that in a bit. Sometimes it's important to me to highlight stories that I feel like interacted well with the gameplay. Sometimes it's just this story in and of itself was very good. And I feel like in this case, most of the selections this year have just been overall good stories. Anyway, the runners-up in this category this year are Hogwarts Legacy, This Way Madness Lies, A Space for the Unbound, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and Sanabi. And the winner for Best Story on Nintendo Switch in 2023 is The Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. Yeah, you've heard me gushing about this game lately. I adore the story in this game. I feel like it is a really big story that explores some big ideas, but it's also a very small and personal story in that it's all about the characters and their different viewpoints, their different emotional ideas. And one of the wonderful things about this game is your choices really matter. This is the one game out of this bunch that I think actually really perfectly balances the story and gameplay elements to make sure that they interact well. And with this, every choice you make in the game's story is felt. You really get the feeling like your choices in the story are creating that story as you go forward. And making that such a big part of the gameplay while still making it feel like this amazing, large, and yet at the same time personal story. When I beat the game, and this is one of the few games this year that I've actually beaten because I very rarely have time to actually beat a game. When I beat the game, I just had to sit back and go, that was start to finish just a delightful story that I enjoyed. And I could absolutely go back to it and replay it again, and I'd probably get a completely different story because of all the different branching dialogue trees and the different card readings you can make. But I just felt so satisfied with the way this ended, and I feel like that's a memory I'm going to cherish.
Okay. Last one is Best New Character.
I feel like this is an important thing to highlight because sometimes the character that you play as or a character that you meet in a story really influences the way that you feel about the entire game, where everything in that game can revolve around that character, or it can be a pivotal point that changes your thought process, or maybe it's just this character's presence raises how you feel about the entire game. And I feel like each of these characters is important in a different way. So, the runners-up in Best New Character in a Nintendo Switch game in 2023 are Addison in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Addison.
He's the guy holding the sign.
Oh my gosh.
The General's Daughter from Sanabi. Rhea from A Space for the Unbound. Moira McKinnon from A Highland Song. Abramar from The Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. And the winner for Best New Character in a Nintendo Switch game in 2023 is Garl from Sea of Stars.
I'll have to play that game at some point.
It's very good. So Garl is kind of interesting in that when you first start playing the game, there are three characters, two who are capable of magic, and then you have this normie named Garl, who is kind of their tag-along friend. You know, he doesn't have the same abilities that his friends do, but he still, wants to support them and be there for them. As you progress through the opening of the game, the two magical characters get more powerful, but Garl remains a normie. The thing is, though, the two main characters in this game really feel like blank slates. They do not have much of a personality to them. I didn't care for them as characters because I didn't feel like I got to know anything about them as characters. In fact, they seemed interchangeable to me, which is why I feel like Garl is so important, because he is such a positive, expressive character that his excess of personality almost makes up for the lack of personality in the two other main characters in this game. And he is definitely the heart of this game, where everyone else is kind of focused on tasks at hand. He might be the one who will stop and say, hey, look at this thing over here. Isn't this cool? Or, wow, that's kind of scary over there, isn't it? He's actually living in this world where the others are just kind of operating in it. And I feel like that is such a huge, important part of this story. And he's a great character, too. He's fun. He has his whole, I'm a battle chef thing. He's really amusing. And his wonderful personality makes up for the fact that he doesn't have any special magical abilities. He's just a really great guy.
Aww.
And I feel like that absolutely shines through. He's one of the highlights of the story in Sea of Stars, and that absolutely deserved recognition in my mind.
All right, everybody, that does it for this day of the 2023 eShopperReviews Game Awards. Thank you again for joining us, and please check back throughout the week for additional awards. See you all next time.
Later.